Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Wisconsin, Mr. Fitzgerald, is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Olson, in your opening statement, it kind of surprised me that you called the January 6th investigation the largest in the history of the National Security Division. I'm just surprised that you kind of led with that in your opening statement. Would you again state for the record what you're investigating as a division and the scope of the investigation?
Sir, with respect to January 6th in particular?
Right.
Yes. I mean, the reason I said that that investigation stands apart as the largest domestic terrorism investigation in U.S. history, the FBI has characterized that investigation and opened it as a domestic terrorism investigation. It is, as the Attorney General has said, the most wide-ranging investigation in U.S. history. The numbers speak for themselves. Over 850 people have been arrested, many, if not most of those, for felonies. It includes serious charges, very serious charges involving assaults on police officers, obstruction of Congress, seditious conspiracy. So it has touched on every state in terms of the FBI field offices and every state in terms of the U.S. attorney's offices around the country that are involved. So by several measures in scale and significance, the significance being that it involved an effort to prevent the peaceful transfer of power, which is one of the pillars of our democracy. By all of those measures, I feel justified in describing it as an investigation that stands apart in our history.
So you yourself said the division investigates, quote, threats of violence. What threats was the division aware of on the days that led up to January 6th?
So I think there's, I don't know exactly how to respond to the question of what threats the National Security Division was aware of, because I wasn't at the National Security Division at the time. I came in the office later. I do think that there was information.
You're aware of what the investigation includes at this point, I'm sure, right?
Absolutely. Again, we're working on that case in partnership with the D.C.
Would
U.S.
you
Attorney's
say that
Office.
DOJ and the FBI failed to anticipate the threats of January 6th or failed to prepare for the threats?
I think the level of violence it speaks for itself. I think we always want to learn to do better when it comes to anticipating something that I think we didn't necessarily anticipate in terms of the level of violence that occurred and in the run-up to January 6th. So
do better.
We always need to continue to learn from that.
Yeah, do better might be soft selling it here. Has there been any coordination between the DOJ and the House of Representatives January 6th committee?
I'm aware of our requests from the Department of Justice for access to transcripts from the Select Committee, but other than that, the answer is no. These are two separate investigations, one by Congress and another by a co-equal branch of government. That's the executive branch, and both of us have a job to do. They're different, and we're continuing to do that.
There are news reports stating that DOJ is considering more charges related to January 6th, but rather than violent acts, these charges are based on speech or verbal communications rather than any of the violence or the threats that were experienced on that day. Is this accurate? Is this actually happening as we sit here today?
So the Department of Justice does not conduct its investigations in public, and that's for a couple reasons. One is to protect those who may be within the scope of the investigation, in other words, those who may ultimately be accused, as well as to protect the integrity of the investigation. So I'm not going to talk about the trajectory or the direction of the ongoing investigation into the events of January 6th and the days leading up to it.
Well, you made some comments earlier based on questions asked by Mr. Jeffries and Mr. Raskin that were, inside what you're actually investigating. That's why I just asked it. Let me just move on. Is what Speaker Pelosi knew regarding potential threats and her preparations or lack thereof something that is off the table, or is that something that could be investigated as well by DOJ?
So again, I'm not going to discuss anything about that ongoing investigation. What I can tell you is it's our obligation at the Justice Department to uphold the rule of law. The rule of law is what distinguishes us from dictatorships and autocracies. And a central tenet of the rule of law is that no one, no matter their status, is above the law. And we will continue to pursue the facts and the evidence and apply the law in the course of our investigation of the January 6th attack.
In my final 30 seconds, I'd just like to go back to my colleague from Rhode Island pointing out that President Biden's DOJ has endorsed the American Online Innovation and Choice Act. Even after the revisions, several national security officials have raised concerns that the bill could limit U.S. tech companies' ability to fight cyber threats and other national security risks. Are you aware if the Department of Defense or any intelligence agencies outside of DOJ were consulted prior to acting Assistant Attorney General Juan sending the letters of support on the American Online Innovation and Choice Act?
It would be normal order for legislation to go through a process that involved a number of different departments and agencies. I know that we were consulted, and I know that ultimately the Department of Justice came out in favor of that legislation, and that national security risks we felt in the National Security Division were addressed by the legislation and the particular changes that were adopted.
The gentleman's time has expired. I now recognize myself for 5